Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. I have some more sample swatch fabric. So today's project, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do just yet, but I have a whole heap of swatch fabrics. These came in a massive sample board that I got a few days ago. And in each one, each story or each colorway has 4 pieces of fabric in there. So you've got these 2 short pieces, a little bit of a wider one, and then you have a bigger one again. I'm going to try and figure out a project that I can do and use all 4 of these fabrics in the one product. So obviously you guys know what I'm making because you've seen the thumbnail. Stick around and we'll find out what it is that I'm going to make. So let's have a look at what we've got here. This was just a great big board with all sorts of sample swatch fabrics stapled inside it. Within each variation, you've got 4 pieces of fabric. So you've got 2 smaller ones, then there's a medium size here, and then you've got a larger piece as well. My aim is to use all 4 of the coordinating fabrics in one product, and I've got a little bit of an idea in mind that I'm hoping will work out well. So the problem we have with these is that they have paper on the back of them. I've tried ironing them, I've tried pulling them off. The paper does not come away. So unfortunately, there's going to be some wastage with the fabric. These also have great big staple holes in them as well. So I'll probably end up getting just a few inches of usable fabric out of these small pieces, but my aim is to use as much as I possibly can. I've taken off all the papers on these ones here, so I've got as much good fabric out of it as I can possibly get. But as I said, the staples, I'll worry about that after. I'm going to put the fabric together first, then I'll be able to cut it down. I do have a little bit of a plan, so it's just a shame that there's so much of this wastage in the fabric. But I'll still get some good sized bags out of it, I think. So let's have a look. I'll just get rid of this. I've got a few sets here to put together. So this one's the blues and yellows, the tans, chocolate, and some reds. My first thought with these fabrics was to have a bag, an elongated bag like this, but I'm not sure that I'm going to do that now. And I also thought I'll stitch these 2 pieces together and then I'll attach those to the bottom of this. My stapled edges are on the bottom here and at the top so they can be trimmed off. And then I can take this piece and we can put that on the other side of the bag. But I think it'll look a little bit silly having a solid on one side and then 3 different colours on the other side. So my plan now is to cut this piece in half and then I'll put one of these on each side and I'm going to attach it to either side of this and then cut that in half, and I'll be able to have, so if you can imagine, this will be one side of the bag and then this will be the other side of the bag. And I think that that will look a little bit better as well because it brings in all of the colours within this fabric range. So I think that that's what I'm going to do. So with this one, because I don't have any preset sizes, I'm just going to put the fabric together like I've done in that patchwork bag. I'll put all the fabric together and then I'll square it up and make sure the back and front are the same size, and then I will cut my lining to the same size. So let's get started on this. The first thing I'm going to do is cut this in half. And if it's not square, I'm not going to worry about it. You can see that that's not particularly straight. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to cut this one in half and I'll square everything up later. There's going to be plenty cut off here. So I've got 2 pieces of fabric now. I'm going to put this one together like that and this one together like this. So just place those right side together. Pop a clip in place just so that you know which end you're actually stitching, although this is pretty obvious, isn't it? And I'll set that one aside for now. I just want to keep my groups together. Okay, so I've gone and stitched 2 pieces together here, And now I need to go and top stitch. So I'll top stitch this fabric so that the two pieces sit nice and flat. Usually when I'm top stitching, I'll let the fabric decide which way it's going. Often that'll depend on how thick the fabric is. I think this will actually be better up to the stripe. Yeah, I think so. I'm going to top stitch along this edge here on both of these pieces, and I'll do that on all of these panels that I've been working on. So I've opened it out and I'm top stitching now onto the stripe side. Okay, I've done the top stitching here, and now I want to decide how I'm going to put these together. I could turn these around to the opposite side. I think that would look okay. And in fact, I might actually do something like this when I put this fabric on. This is the size that we have here. And you would think, okay, I've got this size fabric, I'm going to put this along the long edges, but I'm not going to do that because remember I have big staple holes in the ends of my fabric. I'm not sure you can see it in this one. There are big staple holes here. I'm going to need to get rid of that excess there, and the same along the top here. This piece of fabric also has staple holes all the way along the edge there. So I need to keep that in mind when I'm deciding which way I'm going to put these fabrics together, because once I chop this and this off, it's going to be too short, but short the other way. This is what I'm going to end up doing, and I'll have this one over the other side, but I actually think I like the idea of having them over the other way. I might try a couple of different versions when I put this together. First thing I need to do here is find the center and cut this piece of fabric in half. I'm going to attach this piece onto here. I'm going to line up these holes along here, and I'll start around about there. That way I get the most out of the stripe fabric. I'll lose a little bit of this fabric at the bottom here, but that's really just going to be an accent. So I think I'll put them together exactly like this, because this doesn't need to be trimmed at the bottom. This one does because of all the holes. And if I stitch this starting at this point, then I can just cut straight across the top there. And that'll give me the best use of the fabric. So I'll bring that together, and I've got to keep in mind the layout of the bag for the other side. When I put this together, I don't want to have these two pieces of fabric beside each other when I've got the back and front together. So the next thing I need to work out is the placement of the front pieces or the back pieces. So I'll line that up again because I'm going to have opposites again. So this time I've got these holes along here. I'm going to line that up so that it lines up with the straight edge here. I've got the holes along here, so I'll lose a little bit more of that, but that's fine because I'm doing that on the other side. And this one here obviously needs to line up with that to some extent anyway. So I'm happy with that. This is how it's going to look. Say this is the back. The back's going to have this layout here. The front will have this layout. Stripes are in opposite directions. And when we put the back and the front together, these will be the ones that are facing each other. I won't have these fabrics. So I'm happy with that. So what I'll do is stitch down the long edge on both of these, and then I will do a top stitch. When I do the top stitch for this, because there's only one piece of fabric on this side, I'm actually going to do the top stitch with my seam facing the long piece of fabric. Otherwise it gets too bulky in this area here. Once these three pieces are all together, we can go and top stitch, and we'll top stitch our seam to the side that has the least amount of seams. Okay, here are the pieces stitched together. I've done the top stitching along both of those. So the placement of the fabric for these bags, I'll have the stripes on this side, and then you'll flip it over and the stripes will be in reverse with the straight there. And when you open this out and look at the side of the bag, you'll have the opposing fabric. So you're not going to have these butting up next to each other. It's time now to square all this up and then I can cut up some fabric for some lining. I can actually do all of this all in one go as well. So what I'm going to do, just to save some time, is lay these fabrics on top of each other. I don't need to do anything with the side edges, but I do need to trim off the sections that have the staple holes in it. So I will remove as little fabric as possible. And I also want to line up the center seam as well, because we do want to have those butting together later. So I'll just trim off straight along here. I'm going to use one of the straight lines on my ruler and line that up with the straight edge of my stitching here, and that will help give me a nice straight line at the top. And I'll do the same on the other side. And that should have got rid of all the holes. Flip that around. And there we have our fabric. And now I've changed my mind. Okay, so my original plan was to have the top of the bag up here. If I want to have a shorter bag with a wider opening, I can put them together like this. But I think now I'd like something deeper, like I was doing on my patchwork bags. And I think that's how I'm going to put them together. And then that way you've got the solid or the big print in opposing corners. And I actually kind of like this. What do you think? I'm going to do two versions. So we'll have a look and see which way looks best. But I'll do two different bags, one long ways and one widthwise. So now I need to cut my lining. I just need one piece to measure for my lining. So I've got myself two pieces of lining here. I've just laid those out on top of each other. So I'm going to place one bag piece of this colour and one of the other colour. Cut them out at the same time, and I'm just going to basically trace the outline of the shape of the bag that I've just cut. And this way you don't have to worry about any measurements, and you get your fabric cut to the same size as the bag that you're working on. Okay, so my lining is cut out for both bags. And I think I'll put a pocket in these bags as well. In a previous video, it dawned on me that I can use the swatch fabric for the pockets as well. So I'm going to get some swatch fabric from another range and make up some pockets with that. So these are some samples that I pulled apart the other day. And I might actually just see if I can find something that will closely resemble the fabric in there. I kind of like that. And what can I use on this one? And I think I'll go with that. So take your pocket pieces, fold them right side together, leave an opening at the top here, stitch around the sides, both of them. Then you can clip your corners, turn it through and do a top stitch along one long edge. Okay, I have stitched the top edge and the side edges, left a little bit of an opening just here. Then I've clipped the corners on both sides, turned the pocket through and then top stitched one long edge. I've got the opening clipped closed at the bottom here, and that's going to form the bottom of my pocket. So let's take our lining fabric, fold your pocket in half and find the center. Now you've got to remember the orientation of your bag as well. I'm going to do two different orientations. So this bag here is, I've actually forgotten what I was going to do. So I'm going to make this bag a longer bag and the other one I'll make a wider bag. I'm going to fold this long edge over to the other long edge to find the center position. And I'll just mark a crease, open that out, and there's my center here. And I'm going to place this lining fabric directly over the center there, and I'll bring that down about 4 inches. So this pocket is 4 inches from the top edge here. So I've pinned that in place. I'll stitch that pocket down. The other one, I'm going to have the bag in the opposite orientation. So rather than having the pocket go across here, I'm going to have the pocket go across here. So I'll take this short edge here, bring that across, find the center position. We're putting the pocket on the right side, so we're putting right sides together. And I might bring this one down 3 inches instead of 4 inches. Okay, let's stitch the pockets together on both lining pieces. When you're attaching the pocket, reinforce the stitching at the top edges here. I really like the contrast in colour with the upholstery fabric or with the swatch sample fabric over the lining here. And by using the sample fabric, it's got a little bit more body than your regular fabric, so you don't actually need to go and interface this when you put it together. So I'm really enjoying using these. Okay, with our pockets together, we can take our lining pieces, place them right side together. Then we're going to stitch down both long edges and across the short edges and leave an opening of about 3 inches. We'll do that with the lining for both bags. And if you're sewing to sell, decide whereabouts you want to put your label as well. I'm going to quickly go and put my labels on here before I put everything together. The linings for both bags have been stitched together with the opening at the bottom. I've popped my labels inside. Now we need to put the outside of the bag together. Before we put the bag together, we actually need to put our handles on. The one thing that's usually pretty standard with my bags is the size of the handles that I put on. And of course the fact that I use strapping or webbing instead of handmade handles. I cut my strapping out at 44 inches and then just cut that in half. These are 1 inch wide. And all you need to do is find the centre of your fabric. The centre of my fabric is just there. And then you just need to decide whereabouts you want to place your handles. And I generally place my handles about halfway between the centre and the outside edge. So for this particular bag, the midpoint is 3 1/4 inches, so I'll make a mark on both sides, and that's where I'm going to place my handles. So basically it's just the midpoint between the centre and the outside. And I'll repeat that for the other one. Rather than measuring it, I'll place the front and back together, line up the other handle in line with the one that I've already measured. So my handles can be stitched in place. And for the other one, I'm having a different orientation, so my bag will be positioned like this, and then I've got to make sure I have them the right way around. So the centre of my fabric just happens to be the centre of the stitching line, and that's 3 3/4 inch. So my next handle is going to go in the midsection there, 3 3/4 inch from the centre. Okay, I'll go and stitch the handles down on the bag and then we'll be ready to put them together. Okay, place your bag right side together. When you're placing the side seams together, you just want to make sure that these overlapping seams connect. They'll butt together nicely. Pin it or clip it to the end and repeat for the other side, and then we can clip our bottom edges together. Now I've already decided what size I'm going to have my boxed corners. So I know that I'm going to have a boxed corner of 1 1/2 inches. So 1 1/2 inches for me is there and here. This area here will be cut out afterward. What I do when I sew my side seams together is I'll stitch down the long edge here and I'll back stitch here because I know that I'm going to be cutting this fabric out, and then I'll just continue on. When I come around and do this, I'll actually back stitch in this section as well and continue on, and I'll do exactly the same thing in the areas that I'll be boxing my corners. That just helps me keep my fabric together when I do actually cut it apart later. And this one, I'll place that right side together as well, and I'll probably do the same thing as far as my boxing is concerned, but where I had my fabric lining up on the side seam, that's not going to happen with this bag. It'll actually line up on the bottom. So I want to butt my seams together at the bottom section first, and then I'll line up the rest of the bag. There's no extra seams here to match up, and I can just clip that in place and take it to the machine and stitch it. And again, I'll do the same thing with the area that's going to become my boxed corners. Let's go and stitch these two bags together, and then we will do our corners. Whenever I have seams here that have been joined in my products, I do actually go over this seam a couple of times just because there's extra bulk in there and I want to give that a little bit more support. Now I've decided to do different sized boxing on the bags. This one here is a little bit taller, so I'm going to have a 1.5 inch corner, and this one here being a little bit shorter, if I do at 1.5 inches, I'm going to lose that in height. So I'm only going to do a 1 inch box. It'll bring it down in height just a smaller amount. And it doesn't need to be as deep either because it's probably going to be big enough to fit a tablet or a small MacBook or something like that. So this one's going to have a 1 inch box corner, which will give me 2 inches width across the base. I'm going to do a 1.5 inch box corner, which will give me 3 inches at the bottom. Line up your 1.5 inch mark on the stitching line. And you can cut that out. If you want to, you can just place these on top of each other and cut them out at the same time. So that's the 1.5 inch boxed corner, and this one here we're going to do 1 inch. Okay, open out the boxing, and we have 2 seams here and we want them to go in opposite directions. So it's up to you whether you have the back going to your right and the front going to your left, or if you do it the other way around. It makes no difference whatsoever as long as you're consistent throughout the pattern. I've done the back section to my right on the other side, so I need to do the same thing on this side and for my lining. And by doing that means you're going to have your seams locking in nicely when you've put everything together at the top here. So where this seam is going over to my right, I'm just going to clip that so that when I come to putting the 2 bag pieces together, I know which way that seam is going to go. Do the same along here, and I'll repeat that for the lining. So again, if I've had my back seam go to my right, I want to do the same thing here and have that seam going in the same direction. I'll take those to the machine and stitch those corners closed. And we'll do the same for this one. I like to double stitch over this because it's so thick and bulky with the upholstery fabric. I just want to make sure everything is nice and secure. Okay, let's put these bags together. So this one is the shorter, wider one. Flip the lining right side out and place that inside the bag. And then just match up your side seams. You'll notice that my seams are going in opposite directions again. It distributes the bulk of the fabric nice and evenly and helps line up those seams. Then distribute the rest of the fabric evenly along the top. We'll take this to the machine, stitch all the way around. I'll reinforce where the handles are, and then when we've done that, we'll turn the bag the right way around, poke all the corners out that we need to, and then we can top stitch. Remember when you stitch over the handles to go forward, back and forward again. We want to make sure that's really well reinforced. I've stitched the bag together at the top. All I need to do now is bring the lining to the inside, clip or pin it all together. Then I'll do a row of top stitching all the way around the top edge. Forget about the lining for the minute. I'm really liking the difference in the 2 bags so far. Let's go top stitch. Okay, that's all the bags done, and we can now close up the bottom of the bag. Put your fingers on either side of the opening here, pull that taut, train the fabric so that the folds go underneath, pull it nice and taut, and then you can stitch the layers together. Let's have a look and see how they turned out. Well, I'm really happy with how these have turned out, particularly this one. I love that it's a little bit shorter and wider. This will be great for some kind of a small tablet and easier also to find things in there. I do actually just think this little one is a much better layout than this one, Both of them have started out with exactly the same size fabrics, and you get two different layouts out of them. It's just a matter of having a play around and seeing what you can come up with. I like this side, but I think I just like these colours. I'm going to make a couple more of these this afternoon and see how they look, and I think I'll probably stick with this layout. I kind of like that squat look. And there we have it. I finished 4 bags this afternoon. All of these bags have been made using the same 4 sample swatch pieces that I showed you earlier. They've come up really well. I'm actually very, very happy with these. I had no real plan as to what I was going to do with these fabrics when I started this morning. But I'm really happy with the way they've turned out. This was the biggest piece of fabric, which was cut in half. This one was the next size up. And then I had 2 small pieces of fabric as well, which have really just been put back together just like you would when you're making a quilt. They've come up very, very well. I love these colours. I particularly love this one. I think these will sell very, very well. I ended up making 3 in this orientation. I decided I liked this orientation much better than the longer one. And I've got lots of the longer bags. You saw my patchwork bag, the 4-patch bag that I put up the other day. So I think I've got enough bags that are this orientation, and they're very, very simple with the 4 fabrics front and back. So I think I've still got plenty of fabric left in this swatch book. I'm going to go and make all of the fabrics up in these style bags. Now I sell the other version for $45. I'm going to sell all of these for $45 in the shop. They're fully lined. They've got the pocket on the inside. So $45 is a good fair price. I think they'll do really, really well. Especially, I think that one will be the first to go. I'd be surprised if it wasn't. A lot of products that I make to sell, I don't put a lot of extra things in there like zips and pockets and closures, because I'm trying to keep my time down. I need to try and get lots of product done. So I don't have a lot of time to go and put zips and recessed pockets and all sorts of things in there. So that's why I don't often go and put zips and other closures in my bags. If I'm sewing to sell, I try to keep it as simple as possible. That helps keep the pricing down and helps make them easier for me to sell as well. So which ones do you like? Did you like this version where it's a little bit longer, or do you like these shorter, wider bags? I reckon I like these wider ones. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's just another idea of what you can do with sample swatch fabrics or offcuts. Doesn't matter whether it's upholstery fabric or quilting fabric or any other fabric for that matter. You can just put them all back together and make something really great with them. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I shall catch you next time. Bye for now.